everyone. Have you ever wondered how to write a cozy mystery? Well, stay tuned as we learn more about one author's process. My name is Raymond. Now I can't talk. My name is Joan Raymond, author and writing coach, and this is a Heart for Writing, where I provide resources, encouragement, and one-on-one chats with authors like what you'll hear today. Today, I'm honored to chat with Miranda Dean James, the New York Times and USA best-selling author of The Cat in the Stacks and Southern Ladies Mysteries, currently a part-time medical librarian at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. Dean has 4 cats and thousands of books and a house perpetually in need of dusting and dehairing. And he's almost always working on a new book when possible, when possible, reading books as well. Let me bring Dean on, and so we can talk. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Joan.
Good to see you.
You too.
So you're all the way in Mississippi. I'm in California, so we're just a little ways away from each other.
Yeah, the miracle of technology.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
When it works.
Yes, exactly. When it works. So before we get into how you actually write, I'd like to know and there's one of them right there.
That's Ernie, yeah.
Hi, Ernie. How are
I'm
you?
going to electrocute himself on my electrical cables for my computer.
When did you first find out you had a heart for writing?
I think it was when I was a kid. Around the age of 10 or so, I discovered Nancy Drew, and I'd been a big reader before that, but mysteries just suddenly grabbed me, and I read, as many Nancy Drew books as I could get my hands on, and then I discovered some of the other kid detectives and stuff, and Trixie Belden was my other big favorite because Trixie lived on a farm like I did. And at some point, it occurred to me that people actually wrote books. They didn't just appear magically at the bookstore or the library. So I thought, well, I want to do that. That would be fun. And so I sat down and wrote a very bad knockoff of sort of a mixture of Nancy Drew and Trixie Belden, and even sent it to a publisher, but it came back with a very polite, faded mimeographed rejection letter. So, at that age, I couldn't handle rejection. So I gave up for many years. But then when I was in graduate school, I had and I read, lots and lots of adult mysteries by then. I decided, well, I want to do this because I'd read one or two that I thought I could do better than that, So I tried, and it took me 15 years to get published after I wrote that first book.
Wow. And so everybody that thinks he's an overnight sensation, it's not true.
Well, then it took another 10 years before my books really took off.
Wow.
So I tell people I'm a 25-year overnight sensation.
And so it's always been mysteries, like you mentioned Nancy Drew and whatnot. So when you grew up, did you ever read anything other than mysteries?
Oh, yes. I read a lot of historical romance in high school, historical fiction. Anya Seton, who was one of the great American historical novelists, various periods. I found her stuff compelling. Green Darkness was the first one I read. It's about reincarnation, but most of the book is set in Tudor England. And that really grabbed my attention. And I soon began reading other things set in different periods of English history, and I became fascinated with that. And I also discovered Roberta Gellis, who wrote these wonderful medieval romances that were chock full of history. And I became one of them was set during the Civil War in the 12th century, and I became fascinated by that. So that's how I ended up going to grad school for medieval history. But
wow, yeah.
And Georgette Heyer, who is one of the best ever romance writers, is one of my top 2 or 3 favorite writers.
That's awesome. And obviously we can see behind you, you just have just a few books on the shelves behind you. So
yeah, we're in my office. So most of what you see are my history, nonfiction reference things.
So before Charlie and Diesel, and we'll be talking about that mostly, but before which is the Cat in the Stacks, but I like to, it's Charlie and Diesel. Charlie's the main character. He's the librarian, and Diesel is his cat. you wrote some other series, and I'm going to bring those up. So the first series you wrote were the Simon Kirby Jones mysteries, correct?
Yes, I wrote 4 of those. I had published a couple of books that were sort of loosely connected before that with a small press, but this was my first real series.
Mhm.
And Simon is a gay American vampire who resides in a little village in England. And it's sort of my twisted take on Agatha Christie with a dash of Anne Rice. They're definitely cozy.
Yes. And then you have the Southern Ladies, and which I've heard that you might be going back to those. Maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, the publisher, they are back basically an offshoot of the Cat in the Sacks books because
Mhm.
sisters who are in their 80s were first introduced in the 4th Cat in the Sacks book out of circulation. And I did 4 books with them. These are number 3 and number 4.
Right.
And unfortunately, they just do not sell as well as the other books. So the publisher didn't offer a contract for a 5th one. But once I'm fully retired and can write, what I want, I'll have time to write books in other series, including
Mhm.
Harry Jones books, and another series, the Wanda Nell Culpepper books. And Wanda Nell is a single mom who lives in a trailer park in Mississippi and who
Okay.
becomes an amateur detective. So I would like to write more books about all 3 sets of characters.
Isn't it, as writers, we have so many ideas for so many different series, but then we get, we're with the one and it's important. But I have other ideas for other series too, but I'm sticking
Yeah.
with the one right now. So
Right. Well, as long as I've been, employed full time, there just wasn't time. And for a while there, I was doing 2 books a year. But now that I've cut down to just working 3 days a week, I've got a little more time. And then eventually, when I do retire fully, I'll be at home, 7 days a week, and
mhm. Yeah.
I can get
Now,
myself disciplined enough.
yeah, yeah, because when you have all the time in the world, sometimes it slips away just easier,
Well, I have so much reading I want to catch up on.
Oh, yeah, I've got the stack, believe me. So I am a huge fan. This was the very first book in the Cat in the Stack series,
Yes.
and I have all of them, but the last one in paperback, the last one I have in ebook. But I'm going to show this picture. So here is the first one, right on the and then the newest one, which is number 15. Kiss Me Deadly. That one's coming out next, when is it again? July?
July 2023.
Yes. And this one has some musical stuff in it. I was reading a little bit about it
Yes.
and band member, and I won't go into all the details, but do you want to say anything about that one?
Well, I'll say, unfortunately, it's, by the time it comes out, it'll be 2 years between books, which I regret.
Mhm.
Things happen. Hiss Me Deadly involves the return to Athena of a local son who has been away for 40 years. He ran away from an abusive father and went out to California to pursue his dream of becoming, professional musician, not museum. And he became wildly successful. And he ran away as a 17-year-old. And the local college wants to honor him and give him an honorary doctor's degree in music. So he does decide to come home. But somebody is not happy that he's back.
Mhm.
And bad things start to happen to people.
Yes.
All I'll say.
Which that's what has to happen in these cozies. Now, and for people that don't understand a cozy, cozies are in your definition. What is a cozy?
Well, a cozy is a mystery that takes place inside, for the most part, inside of some kind of community, like an academic department, a small town, a neighborhood, um, a group of people joined by something. Like I had the previous book, Cat Me If You Can, had to do with a group, a book club,
Mhm.
you know. So, and in this case, it's, people connected to this famous musician who's come back. And Charlie vaguely knew him before, but his friend Melba knew him a lot better. And Charlie thinks that she's maybe in love with him. And that's something we will explore just a little bit in the book. But but that there's that kind of close personal connection among the people involved in the story. Other factors are the fact that there's not usually any really explicit violence, not any real gore. I mean, my characters don't go attend autopsies, for example. And there's no explicit sex, no graphic sex. Things may happen off the page, but that's the character's business and nobody else's. I learned that from Elizabeth Peters. She would have Amelia and Emerson getting a little amorous with each other, and then the door would close. And that's the way to do it, because people don't read these books, for erotica. There's plenty of that if that's what you want. And I think that those are the main things.
And an amateur sleuth too. I mean, it's not
an amateur.
Yeah, which I think
there are police procedurals that are on the cozy side, particularly some of the older British ones.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go into a lot of violent detail or anything, or graphic sex. But the modern American cozy is very much like I described.
Yeah, and I think we always like to see the little guy, help out or do something like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's not at all realistic for Charlie to keep getting involved in all these murders. I mean, he's up to the 15th one. I contract for 2 more. So, but that's part of the fun. Readers go along for the ride. They can, that's what I love about Nancy Drew. I go along with her wherever she went.
Right.
And live vicariously. I grew up on a small farm, and that was exciting.
Well, it's like, what was it in Murder, She Wrote? They said, how many more people can die in Jessica Fletcher's town? It's like, or, she goes on a cruise and somebody dies, but, that's
it's like, who would let her on the ship, or who would in the house? They saw her.
Exactly. It's like, oh, no, we don't want you. So, so let's go into the nuts and bolts of writing, because you are on book 15, which is huge. And so you're not a strict plotter, right? This is what...
No, I'm not. I come up with the basic idea. In the case of Hiss Me Deadly, it was, prodigal son comes home. And I did that in the first book too, but it's been long enough that I thought it was okay to do it again and put a different twist on it. And because, these things happen in a small town. People go and they come and what have you. And I'm always interested in how the past influences the present. That's partly because why I became a historian and studied history. What relevance did what happened in the 12th century in England, what does it have to do with today? Mm-hmm. The answers can sometimes be very surprising. But I'm always interested in family dynamics as well. And basically, every one of my books in any series has something to do with family dynamics. Because if you have, even only a handful of relatives, that everybody doesn't get along and there are tensions and stuff, and people are jealous that so-and-so did this and they couldn't, and all kinds of stuff. So I like to work with those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. And people can relate to that too.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody has, that one relative they all wish wouldn't come to the reunion. The one that would like to poison at Christmas time and get it out of the way. I know I've certainly got a couple, but anyway, let's see, where was I going with that?
Not being a plotter.
Not being a plotter, yes. I come up with that basic situation, and then I start to think about the characters. I mean, I have my set of regular characters. Mm-hmm. Charlie and Diesel, and Charlie's children and their families, and his best friend Melba, and his fiancee Helen Louise, those people to work into the story. But then I think about the people who are necessary for the story I'm writing now, and I start to come up with names and things, and sort of thinking about who they are and what function they're going to serve, and then I just start writing. Mm-hmm. And I don't write until I can get the first line of the book into my head. I'm kind of weird that way. I want to make sure I've got the right first line. And once I've got that, I used to not start a book until I had a title. And pretty much I still don't, but it's not often my title. Hiss Me Deadly is my title.
Oh, good.
The marketing department has said, no, that's not going to work. So they come up with something else. And I really can't turn them down.
Yeah.
So, and then I start writing, and as I figure out the story, I'm telling the story to myself.
Hmm.
I figure if I can tell myself a story and stay interested in it, then maybe readers will be interested. And I get to a certain point and I realize, oops, I need to tinker a little bit to make this work better. And I had to do that with this book. I had to change a couple things early on to fit them into my vision for the end of the book. But usually by the time I'm done, my subconscious has really done its work. And I often think about the book and the plot and everything when I'm in bed trying to go to sleep. And I think
Yep.
during the night, my brain churns it over, which would
Mhm.
be some of the really odd dreams I have. Because I have dreamed, mystery plots that make no sense whatsoever, but there may be something in them that,
Mhm.
filters through the subconscious. So,
My characters like to wake me up at 5 a.m. and say, "Oh, I want to add this to the story." And you don't always know who the killer is until you get closer to the end, right? Or do you?
usually I have a person in mind,
Hmm.
because I also want to know, as I'm getting going, why that person is moved to kill somebody.
Hmm.
But that doesn't always stay the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get toward the end of a book and I start thinking about the way things are set up, and I realize, oh, this person could also be the killer, and in a way that makes more sense.
Hmm.
And because that person has an extra motive.
Yeah.
That's kind of the case in this book.
And people that are strict plotters would have no idea how we do it. It's just sometimes it just happens. I just know it happens.
Right.
So how on average, how long does it take you to write a book? I know you said this one has taken a little bit longer. So
Well, this one's taken 2 years, but normally I can, to get a book done in 4 to 6 months.
okay.
One time in a little over 3 weeks.
Wow.
But that was the one and only time that the plot just sort of laid itself out to me, and I don't know how that happened, why it happened. It's never happened again.
Yeah.
I just knew exactly what was going to happen every step of the way, and I was also quite a bit younger. I was at least 17, 15, 17 years younger than I am now, and I had the physical stamina to do that.
Yeah.
Anymore, I don't.
um so during the 2 years that it took you to write this book, did you start feeling like, can I get this done? Am I going to do it again? Imposter syndrome. I know we all deal with imposter syndrome. Talk about that.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I kept thinking, I just had lost my mojo. I have never, ever struggled over a book like I struggled over this one. There were personal things going on, and, of course, all the pandemic stuff. And
Hmm.
it affected me much more than I realized. I couldn't concentrate very well. And, just, it was miserable.
Yeah.
But I finally realized, I have, you know, done my best to ruin my, publishing house's patience with me. And I'm just so enormously grateful to my agent and my editor for running interference for me and everything. Of course, it hasn't hurt that this whole paper shortage thing came about,
Yeah.
because they're having to shift all kinds of publication dates to make sure that
Hmm.
paper and everything. So I benefited a little bit from that, but basically this is ridiculous.
Yeah. I, but
And
it's done. It's getting done. You said you were 2 chapters to the end now, so you can see the finish line.
right, yes. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yes, I promise to turn it in today.
Wow. Okay, so what happens after you finish the first draft? Does it go to your editor, a critique group? Who sees it first other than
My
you?
editor.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nobody around here that I could have a good critique group with. And
Okay.
so it goes to her, and she is one of those editors who reads it thoroughly. And it'll come back from her with queries and suggestions and so forth. But she immediately sends it on to the line editor. So the line editor is working on it at the same time she is. And what I get back is usually the combined edits. Unless she thinks I really need to rewrite something, then she'll just send it back to me and then wait, and I'll get the copy edited later. But she's my touchstone, I guess I'd say. I
Okay.
judge it implicitly.
And then do you ever have beta readers at any point, or just it's mostly no? Okay.
No, I mean, the people that I would love to ask to do it are just far too busy.
Yeah.
So, and my experience with the copy editors, in Berkeley have been, on the whole, really pretty good. They catch, small things that, I lose track of.
Yeah.
Writing. So, and that helps a big deal.
So with so many books, how do you keep track of the characters? I know that there's like an ongoing thing we were talking before we got on here with postpartum depression, in which we are going to talk about some of those other issues. But you continue these stories with the main characters, Helen, Louise, and Charlie, and whatnot. How do you keep track, or do you just remember at all?
I just, in my head, I guess. I mean, at this point, I really should go through the books again and make notes on each one about character development and so forth. But I just haven't been organized to do it, and I just frankly haven't felt like I really, really needed to do it.
Okay. I mean, to me, reading them, it seems like a very natural arc for all of their different.
Well, thank you. And I have them all on my computer, so
Yeah.
and go and search through them to find things if I need to.
Yeah, like baby Charlie, we just don't want him to go from 2 months old to 6 or something.
He's about 15 months old now, and Rosie is 1.
Yeah.
So and there's another one on the way.
Oh, nice.
Laura's going to have another baby.
Nice. So research. I know I do a lot of research when it comes to certain ways people die and whatnot, but so what about different methods of doing away with the victim? Do you ever feel like a need to be totally unique and come up with something amazing, or do you just,
No, Agatha Christie's already done that.
Yeah.
And some of the other Golden Age writers, John Dixon Carr came up with some of the most convoluted ways to kill people in the locked room mystery. One of them is so utterly ridiculous. I mean, it would work, but it was, an interesting story. It's called The Crooked Hinge. If you want to read an impossible Golden Age crime, and it's, but it's entertaining. But no, I mean, I don't deal with guns because I know almost nothing about guns. But ever alive, I would be tempted to use them because, he knew a lot about weapons. He was a soldier in World War II and everything. And so he had learned a lot about guns growing up on the farm and everything. But I just avoid them. I mean, I like to push people downstairs, run them over with cars.
Crush them with, what was it?
The compact shelf in the library.
Yeah, the file thing, yeah.
And shellfish allergy, peanut allergy.
Yeah, poisoning. You've had a few.
Yeah, and just bashing people over the head.
Yep, that was that one.
So I go for the simple. And so everything takes place. Charlie lives in Athena, Mississippi, but you have ventured away, like you mentioned the book club. That was one. Charlie was on for the last one. He was at a farm he inherited, and a lot of the action. It's still basically Athena, but it was his grandfather's farmhouse, and which he thought had gone out of the family, but it turned out it really hadn't. He inherited it when the leaseholder died. And that was prompted partly because of my memories of my great-grandfather James's house. He lived across the road and up the hill from my grandparents. And my grandfather's younger brother lived there when I was growing up. And he died, I think, when I was about 7 years old. But I remember going up there, to see him and his wife and his mother-in-law who lived with them and stuff. And I just have the vaguest impressions of what the house looked like. So I tried to make the house and What the Cat Dragged In somewhat similar to my memories, just sort of nostalgia.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think it's a good idea to take your characters on vacation once in a while?
It doesn't hurt if you can come up with a reasonable idea for it. You know, I had been to Asheville and I'd been to Biltmore, and I just thought it would be kind of fun to work that in. And I thought, well, how would I do that? And I came up with like a book club retreat, you know, and that's how I did it. But at the moment, I really don't have an idea fully formed to take them anywhere else. You know, I'd love to take them to Ireland.
Wow.
Charlie and Helen Louise and Diesel, but you know, taking your cat with you, particularly to the British Isles and Ireland, is a bit difficult because of the regulations and stuff. So, you know, but I may decide I want to go see the Grand Canyon, and off we'll go.
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said you're contracted for 2 more, so there's going to be a number 16 and 17.
17, yes, And
You
I'm
have,
that there will be more, but we'll see.
yeah. Well, like me, I can only think about the book I'm working on and maybe how it's going to tie into the next book. I can't even think too much farther ahead.
Yeah, I've got a vague idea for the next book, and I came up with a title, but I don't know if it's going to go. I have to mention it to my editor and my agent, see what they think. Because I always like my titles to have a little something to do with the plot, some small way, and that doesn't always happen though.
Yeah, well, you always have to have the hiss or the cat or something in there too, because with yours.
And I'm kind of laughing over this title because it's a takeoff of a Mickey Spillane book.
Yeah, Kiss Me Deadly.
Yeah, and there is nothing further from cozy than Mickey Spillane.
But it works, you know. So getting back to tackling the issues: postpartum depression, LGBTQ. Your characters are real; they're very, very relatable, which gives us readers empathy for them. So, any other topics you're going to bring up in future books? Do you know, or just stick with some of
Well, I mean, not offhand. I mean, you know, these things come about kind of organically, just because of the story and the families and stuff. And you know, I don't know that anybody in my family has suffered from postpartum depression, but you know, I know it happens a lot more than people realize. You know, and I thought, you know, maybe this will help make people aware of it.
Yeah, definitely.
That it's a very serious thing. It's not easily, you know, you don't recover from it easily. You know, and in the you know, with the gay and lesbian and trans community, you know, we're everywhere. You know, and I know there are people who won't read my books because of Stuart and Haskell. You know, a couple who live in Charlie's house and things, but you know, that's their issue, not mine.
Right. Well, characters are characters. I mean,
and if they think they don't know people like this, they're crazy.
Well, I know when I'm writing, all of a sudden my character turns out to be somebody completely different, and it's like I got to go with it, or else I'm not authentic. That character can't be authentic to me unless they are authentic on the page.
Right. When people tell me they love Stuart, you know, Charlie met him in the second book, and I didn't even plan this, but Stuart just showed up at Charlie's house saying, because people were being killed where he lived. It's like, I need a room. And Charlie let him move in, and now Stuart's his best friend.
Yeah, they're good friends. I like that.
And their relationship is a lot of fun to write. There's one scene in this book which I got some chuckles over, because Stuart is always, you know, facetious, you know, and stuff, and I get a kick out of throwing in a little humor with him. And Charlie, you know, Charlie loves it.
Yes. And do we see? Oh goodness, Ramses is.
Oh yeah, Ramses is there.
Okay, he's the kitten.
He's still growing and learning. He doesn't get to go with Charlie anywhere because he's not reliable.
Right.
Liz, but he makes his appearances. You know, the Dakota sisters are not in this book at all.
Okay.
You know, I just couldn't see a way to squeeze them in other than one scene, and that would have been just too many people to try to work with, because there's a big reception for the book, and it would just have been too many people to try to work in. So hopefully they'll be back in the next book.
They fit really well in the one where you had the book club because,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were the ones who paid for the whole thing.
right. So,
I mean, they're very rich. I get a really big kick out of making them extremely wealthy.
and doing such nice things with their money. So,
Yes, they do. They're very good.
um, one thing we haven't mentioned, and I am going to say that Dean is very adamant about supporting indie bookstores, and there's a really good reason for that because for 30 years you were at.
Murder by the Book in Houston. But I know how independent bookstores function, and the emphasis is always on customer service. People learn to rely on what you've read and your recommendations, and they rely on the fact that you come to know them and know, no, she doesn't need to read any books in which children are harmed.
Mhm.
That's a big, big no-no for her. So you never recommend a book like that. You also don't recommend a book you haven't read unless you've heard about it from your coworkers enough to know that yes, it would fit this person's reading style.
Mhm.
And I don't care how much the algorithms of Amazon tell you. I have seen ridiculous recommendations from them for me.
Yeah.
It's like no way in hell. It's just
Yep.
So I think they want to sell certain things.
Of course.
Yeah, I love indie bookstores, and I go to one every chance I get.
So Dean's book, number 15, Hiss Me Deadly, is I looked on the IndieBound. So if you're looking for, and I'll put a link in the description, indiebound.com, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then it just automatically will redirect you to the indie bookstore in your area, and then you can search for whatever book you want. The challenge is, though, is his book is not up for pre-order on IndieBound, but it is up for pre-order on Barnes & Noble and a couple other sites. So I'll put a link to the pre-order for Barnes and Noble in the
Yeah.
yeah.
It's also listed at Ingram, which is the big wholesaler that supplies a lot of bookstores around the country.
Mhm.
And if you're local independent, they probably use Ingram and
Right. Yeah.
verified that it's due out. I think it's July 11th.
Right.
Okay.
So what you can do is contact your indie bookstore and tell them that you want to pre-order it because then they can go to Ingram and do all that stuff.
Right, they can put in their pre-order, and
Right.
these pre-orders really are important, because those are the first numbers that the publisher sees.
Mhm.
If they are strong, then that's an encouragement.
Plus, with the paper shortages, it's always good to get your pre-order in first because you want to be in that first print run.
Well, I mean, with ebooks, the hardcovers, the bulk of my sales are actually ebooks. But when they come out in paperback, it's the other way around. The bulk
Yeah.
sales is paperback.
Yeah.
Ebook, but and I actually make I get better royalties on the ebooks.
So buy the ebooks. So
That's fine. And then there's the audiobooks. I mean, this is my first series to get audiobooks. Southern Sisters are in audiobook format too, but
cool.
and I've been really astonished, by the sales of the audiobooks too.
Audiobooks are hot. A lot of people like them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have at least a couple of readers who buy the ebook, the print copy, and the audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
That's I can't help but appreciate those people. That's just amazing to me.
And you were saying that when Hiss Me Deadly comes out, most likely you will be in Houston at Murder by the Book with signed copies, correct?
Yeah. For the last book, I had to just have them send me books and then sign them and send them back because of the pandemic. But
Mm-hmm.
it's been 2.5 years now since I've been to Houston, and I really miss seeing my friends because I was used to going, at least once a year. So I really am hoping that things are settled enough next summer. Although July in Houston is not exactly it's time to go.
Yeah.
But, because it was miserable there. this summer, and it was hot here, but it was a little hotter in Houston. So
yeah, you guys have the humidity. We have 107 to 110, but our humidity is more like 15%. So
yeah.
anyway, I
So,
have one last question for you. So what advice do you have for writers who would like to start writing cozy mysteries?
well, I think you should read and be familiar with what you want to write. Because for one thing, you think, oh, well, I'll write a series about a baker and who knits and does this, that, and the other because I see those selling. But if you don't have a passion for baking or knitting or whatever, and you read a cozy mystery too and think, oh, no, I don't like this, then you don't need to be writing it. If you love cozy mysteries and that's your passion, then by all means, give it a go. And find the good ones, find the bad ones, learn the difference between them, and analyze what makes them bad or makes them good. But read and write, write what entertains you and keeps your attention. Because if it doesn't, then, you're not going to keep the reader's attention. That's my belief.
Right.
I think that's why some bestsellers, after many, many, many books, people start saying, oh, well, they just phoned this one in or somebody else is writing these books, because I think some writers just get plain bored, but they're caught up in that success and they want to keep getting those huge advances, which people like me don't get, of course. So my financial motive is not quite the same. It's just more to pay the mortgage and buy cat food. But, and that happens with some people. And if I ever get to that point, I just don't think I could keep on. I'd have to say, no, I can't do this anymore. I have to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I have ideas for other things that I'd like to write, in mystery. I really have an idea for an English mystery sort of more in the vein of like Martha Grimes or Deborah Crombie, who are two of my favorites, with a bigger cast of characters and multiple points of view and things like that. So maybe I'll finally get it. When I'm finally retired, I'll get a chance to do that.
That'd be awesome. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you.
So, Dean, thank you so much for being here. I've enjoyed this. I hope the people watching have gotten something out of it and understand that writing a book sometimes can take 3 weeks, but sometimes it can take 2 years, but it's okay. Either
Yeah.
way, it's getting done. And you still love what you do. You still, love the characters. And,
Oh, yeah.
and that's what's important. So.
Yeah, they're part of my family now. I can't envision not knowing what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, you'd have to really wonder what's going on with Charlie and Melba. Melba knows everybody, so you got to at least talk to her a little while.
Well, I found a couple of people in this book that she doesn't know. So.
Oh, nice. Anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure, Joan. Thank you. It's good to see you again.
So to connect with Dean, check out the links in the website. We have his website and his Twitter account, so you can connect with him. And I hope you've enjoyed today's show. If so, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.